I've studied 17 different meta attack strategies and their equipment combinations, compiled that with my own equipment research which has generated over millions of views, and came up with the definitive and best equipment upgrade guide in Clash of Clans. Regardless of your town hall level, experience in the game, how much money you've spent in the game, the time you play per day, regardless of any of that situational stuff, this video will be your end-all be-all guide to know exactly what equipment to upgrade next. But if you don't want to take my word for it, that's completely fine because I'm going to prove it to you with new analysis that has never been seen anywhere else. Before we get into the numbers, it is super important that you understand these three key principles first. First of all, we're only going to focus on the meta attack strategies that are going to work at the higher town hall levels. Since equipment takes thousands upon thousands of ores to go ahead and max out, it is important that we look at things that are going to be good in the long run. This doesn't mean that these attacks won't work at lower town hall levels, it just means that we're going to focus on those attacks that are still meta at Town Hall 16. The next thing to understand is that there are ground attacks and there are air attacks, and the equipment priority for both of these attacks is different. If you want to be 100% effective, then you have to choose either ground or air, because the order that you're going to upgrade your equipment is different for both. Now if you're a casual or non-committal player and you don't know which attack you're going to prefer, then that's okay, because I'm going to give you a general priority as well, but I really think it is effective to choose one or the other. Moving on, to get the numbers for this video, I listed a ton of attacks that are currently meta and being used a lot at the higher level, and then I looked at the equipments that are being used for each of those attacks. If there was a difference of opinion on which attacks should be used, including my own opinion, then I went ahead and put it in the alternate category. After this, I simply just saw which equipment showed up the most in different attack strategies, and let's go ahead and dive into the upgrade guide for ground equipment first. When we take the data that we got for all the equipment and then filter it for the ground equipment, we can see that the Hog Rider Puppet Haste Vial were literally the most used every single time. However, I think this data is a little bit skewed because players probably already had levels on these equipment. But between the two Royal Champion equipment combinations that we have already, I would 100% go for the all common equipment combination simply because it's so much easier to max. So first the Haste Vial, then the Hog Rider Puppet if possible at your town hall level. After that, we're going to move on to the Healer Puppet and the Magic Mirror. The Healer Puppet is very important in both air and ground attacks, and that is why we're going to do it before the Magic Mirror. However, after those two equipment are done, we will do things in the following order: Eternal Tome, Spiky Ball, Rage Gem, and Earthquake Boots. Now I'll be honest, even for myself, I had to look at this data twice because of the Earthquake Boots. But unless we're talking about smash attacks or spam ground attacks, the Earthquake Boots aren't as big of a priority as is apparent in a lot of these attacks. For example, consider Queen Charge Hybrid, you're not really getting the best value. Also, the fact that you can take out max level walls literally at level 1 helps to push this down the order because you don't really need to upgrade it to get that effect. The 4 equipments that I highlighted show up the same amount of times in ground attack strategies, but the only reason that I put some in front of the other is because of the number of times they also show up in air attack strategies. But if you want to do these last 4 in a different order, feel free to do that because you are going to be focusing on ground attack strategies either way. Now some of you might be saying, BD, should we really be upgrading the Hog Rider Puppet instead of the Eternal Tome or something like that? And the thing is, no matter what attack you do, you will be using the Hog Rider Puppet Haste Vial, while sometimes you might be switching out the Eternal Tome for the Fireball. And that is the point of this guide. It is evidence-based based on the usage rates of equipment at the higher level armies. So no matter what you do, if you follow this guide, you'll get a good bang for your buck. So this is the overall priority for ground attack strategies based on not only my own experience, but multiple guides on YouTube, as well as the highest usage rates for these different attacks. Moving on to the air attacks, we're going to see some similarities and some differences. Now if we go back to our chart for equipment and we filter it out for air attacks, we see that the number 1 used equipment is the Healer Puppet, followed by the Eternal Tome. The Queen is almost always in a damage role or a funneling role when she is used in air attacks, and that's why it really makes sense why she has the Healer Puppet and it should be number 1 priority. This is followed closely by the Eternal Tome, since almost any army, whether we're talking about dragons or we're talking about Lalo, is going to benefit from that invincibility in the core of the base. After that, we have the Magic Mirror and the Spiky Ball. The Magic Mirror is being used to go ahead and funnel either on the outside or being used in the middle for a Sui attack, and that really does make sense because it's fast faster and it deals more damage. And the spiky ball can not only take out key defenses, but can offer you a really fast funnel as well. The Rage Gem is the 5th priority for air attackers, and this kind of took me by surprise because generally I thought the Healing Tome was better, but the usage rates really stand by the Rage Gem instead of the Healing Tome. Not only is it used in a ton of attacks, but it's actually used really well in air attacks except for E-Drag attacks. Honestly, I tried to think about why it was being used so much in air attacks, and I think it's because any air attack that uses dragons or a similar type of troop will just benefit from being able to move through the base a lot quicker, which is what the Rage Gem allows you to do. Moving on, the next few pieces of equipment from number 6 to number 8 get really tricky because we have a literal 7-way tie. But don't worry, I'm going to make this super easy for you. First, you have to choose between the Hog Rider Puppet Haste Vial and the Seeking Shield and the Rocket Spear. My vote is for whatever you are closer to maxing already. Next, you have to decide between the Giant Gauntlet and the Earthquake Boots. Again, my vote is for whatever you're closer to maxing. However, if you want to eventually attack ground as well, I would recommend the Earthquake Boots. The last option is the Giant Arrow, which can be super helpful to take out sweepers that are in the middle of the base. However, I would recommend that you get that after getting the first 8 out of the way, so that way you have just a little bit more flexibility. With all of that being said, my recommendation for air attacks is on screen right now with the particular order that I would go in as well. Now let's talk about the equipment that are good if you want to have a general influence on attacks. These smart ones among you, which are literally all of you, have probably realized that the top 8 equipment that I recommended are the same for both ground and air attacks. However, it's important to prioritize them and order them so you get the most benefit for the specific army style that you're using, and based on whether you're doing ground or air, you're going to upgrade them in different orders. When we filter our equipment for the general attack strategies, we get the same top 8 equipment, but we get them in a completely different order as well. First and foremost, we have the Healer Puppet, which was used in 16 out of the 17 different meta attack strategies that I looked at. This equipment is literally the jack of all trades, and we should all have it maxed as players. Next up, we have the 2-way tie between the Eternal Tome and the Magic Mirror. These two equipments always give a great boost to the army, but perhaps more importantly, they can synergize pretty much effortlessly with a majority of attacks that you can think of. After that, we have a 3-way tie between the Spiky Ball, the Hog Rider Puppet, and the Haste Vial. Now, if you're a general attacker, between these three, I think you should do the Spiky Ball first because it is the easiest no skill value equipment there is. After that, you can transition to the Royal Champion equipment, and that'll be important especially for ground attackers. And the last two in the top 8 are the Rage Gem and the Earthquake Boots, and you're gonna do them in that order because of reasons that I previously mentioned. This priority right here is great for casual players, players who don't want to be held back or held down to any particular attack, or just players who don't want to think about it too much. But I know what you're thinking right now. BD, this is great and everything, but what if our equipment gets nerfed and these combinations don't apply anymore? There's two ways to think about nerfs. First of all, if you upgrade all of your equipment evenly and do one level at a time, you're probably not going to get hit by nerfs that hard and you'll be a happy camper. On the other hand, you can upgrade your equipment to max level and get huge power spikes in doing so. I personally think that higher level players should go all in on equipment because, to be honest, you're not really going to get that great usage out of them if you don't. However, if you're scared of nerfs, you can do the following. Upgrade your equipment to the levels that you see in this chart, and this is just a preliminary view on the amount of levels that you'll have to get on a certain piece of equipment to get the majority of the value out of it. All you would do is just take the original chart for ground or for air attacks or for general attacks and then follow the same order, but get the equipment to these levels first, then go back and try to max them. Doing this should ensure that you avoid the heartbreak of maxing your equipment and then getting it nerfed right after. And with that, you have the literal blueprint of exactly what equipment you should upgrade next at all times. But here's the thing, this blueprint does absolutely nothing for you if you don't have your equipment combinations right in the first place. That's why you need to watch this video right here where I break down all of the best equipment combinations based on pro attacks as well as my own analysis.